Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the annual event of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council. This is going to be an interesting day. We're already very used to online meetings. In the Spanish Energy Club, we have already done these kind of events before, and we have already done these kind of presentations before. We had a safety video. You haven't seen it because hopefully you won't need any safety measures in your homes because you already know where the doors and the windows are. But this is our first annual meeting where we are going to have different speakers and presentations where we'll see the highlights, and then we'll have the roundtable with the impact of the energy sector, and finally we'll see how we are facing these climate and energy challenges as citizens. There is interpretation, as you already know, in the landscape. We have a hashtag CECME 20, and you can ask questions through the Slido app. As you probably already seen, you have in Slido all the information on the resumes of the different speakers. So without further ado, we're going to leave the floor to Philippe Boisseau, the Director and CEO of Cepsa. So, Philippe, we're leaving you the floor now. Thank you very much. So, President of the Spanish Energy Club, President and Chairman of the Elcano Royal Institute, Mrs. Secretary General of the World Energy Council, dear friends and colleagues. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of our annual event of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council. This is the fourth time that we're doing this event in Cepsa. Nobody could have imagined just a mere year ago that this meeting was going to be talking again about climate change. We did talk about climate change on our last meeting. But taking into consideration the very serious context of the pandemic that we're living in, we had to talk about this. Nobody could also imagine that this annual event would have to be fully online this time. Just a few speakers, a few members of the organization are physically present in the building. There are way too many families that during the last few months have lost dear members of the families who are sick or having any kind of financial difficulties. So for that reason, the first things I want to say is I want to send strength and the best desires for all of these people. I hope that they will be better in a short period of time and that the situation will improve. It is an honor to be part, yes, in my case, virtually, but at least to be part of this inaugural session. And I'm here with Emilio, Lamo de Espinosa, Chairman of Elcano Royal Institute, with María Victoria Zingoni, President of the Spanish Energy Club. María, I would like to congratulate you because you just become President of the ENERCLUB right now. You have our full support from Cepsa in this new stage or phase that the club is going through. It's also a great honor to have with us the Secretary General of the World Energy Council as our special guest on this inaugural session. Last year, we also had the privilege, the President of the World Energy Council was part of the event, and today we have virtually with us Angela Wilkinson, the Secretary General, as I mentioned before. This is an institution that is 100 years old. And
to recognize the important role of the World Energy Council, which helps us understand better the international energy context and guide us in the energy transition. In the current situation, this role is even more relevant than ever So we are looking forward to hearing from you. Me gustaría aprovechar.
I would also like to continue my speech by just giving some ideas that I think are relevant to the context of the event today. These are 5 ideas that I would like to share with all of you. First of all, is the key role of the energy sector throughout the pandemic. We have guaranteed energy supply all the time, and we have also helped with all the derivative different products that have to do with the energy. We have helped hospitals and everyone in the sanitary industry. We have helped our neighbors, the people that surround us, and Cepsa, as a company, feels extremely proud for the role that we have played. My second idea for today that is also very important is the financial impact of this crisis on all of our companies. According to the recent estimates of the general demand for the 2020, we'll see a decrease in 25%, which will be the most relevant drop in the last 50 years. In the oil companies, we've seen that there's at least a 7% in drop, and in gas, we've also seen an important drop in the demand throughout the year. This clearly has affected investment and income. But I trust that we are resilient, and that resiliency will see us through this. Once we overcome this crisis, and we need to understand that this will continue throughout 2021, we'll have an opportunity to recover and probably to accelerate the energy transition in Cepsa. We are working for that purpose. My third idea will highlight again the key of what we're doing as an European strategy, because this could be a solution to get out of the crisis. This Green Deal of the European Union, through the other processes of digitalization and how we can update the industry, will increase the investment in a long-term perspective, and it will offer sustainability. The European Commission and the Spanish government have our full support for its implementation, because we are convinced that we have a key role to play, not just in the financial context, but also in the technology and industrial and manufacturing areas. We can be leaders in the recovery process. But in order to do so, and this would be my fourth idea or message, would be that we need full cooperation at every single level. Cooperation with citizens, with public and private services and industries, within the different administrations, political parties, but also different countries should work together. We need that financial resources flow freely so that we can continue working on investments. New tools, next generation, will be key in this process. And finally, my fifth and last idea will be the need to work with everyone if we want this recovery to be inclusive and just for everyone. This is really fundamental for the energy sector and a company like the one that I am representing here, because we need to understand better than ever what our customers want. Sorry, what I wanted to say is that what our customers need. So how can we manage teams? How can we improve our communication techniques in order to accompany and help society throughout the different challenges that we're going to face? We need social technology, and we need to be aware because the fight against climate change and the fight against COVID depend on what each one of us will be doing in the next few months. So, throughout the event today, we'll have the opportunity to debate, to discuss about these topics and others, trying to mix different points of view, as we usually do in these kind of events. For these reasons, we are extremely lucky. We have some of the best speakers from the European Commission, from the World Energy Council, from the European Investment Bank, as well as the Women Business Coalition. But we also have with us today two experts on psychology and social psychology that will add another important input for us. I don't want to take any more of your time, so I'm just going to finish with a conclusion. First of all, thank you to the Spanish Energy Club. Thank you to the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council for organizing this. I would also like to thank the Elcano Royal Institute for their help and support, to all the speakers, and to everyone that is here with us today, no matter where you are. Thank you for being here. I would also like to leave the room to Emilio Lamo de Espinosa. Thank you.
Thank you. Many thanks, Philippe. Good morning or good afternoon, even good evening, depending on where you are, because we are not in the same physical space and not in the same timeline. I'd like to say hello to Philippe, Boisseau, Maria Victoria Zingoni, the president of ENERCLUB, and Angela Wilkinson, the secretary general of the World Energy Council. As you know, in a city of China, less than half of a year ago, it happened, zoonosis pandemic. You have to remember the Spanish flu, that is 100 years old, and many other pandemics that we will suffer in the future. Since then, the society has changed, international relations have changed, and also the energy industry is not as it used to be, and we are in front of uncertainty times that is translated into a time of uncertain moments without knowing when we are going to have the necessary visibility and certain ideas. So we are living in an uncertainty moment in terms of our geopolicy. We know that it is very early to know what the consequences of the pandemic could be. Henry Kissinger says that nothing will be the same, but there are other people, and the Institute especially, that agree that it's not going to be very different from the past. But the truth is that we are going to accelerate things and changes. We are all products of our past. But let's be careful, because we have inflection times where quantity can be quality, and where a pandemic could be easily one of the inflection points that we need. I said some time ago, 5 years ago, that we were entering into a post-European world and a post-Western world. The rise of China and the rise of all Asia is very important. China has overcome the pandemic and has an opportunity window in front of the United States and the European Union in a recession moment. Surveys taken place in many countries show that the public opinion thinks that China is the world, the most important international economy. It's not true, but it looks like it seems to be. Barry Plossin from the MIT says that the pandemic is very important and has caused a lot of damage in all the principal or the main countries or powers. So the differences between countries are going to be so huge, and we will have to make an important effort to overcome problems. The United States doesn't want to take global responsibilities, and China has internal problems. The European Union, therefore, doesn't want to and can't take more responsibilities. We have a lot of global problems such as pandemics, global change, global climate change, and we don't have a lot of multilateral solutions. We are in front of a non-governance world, no leaders, with all types of adventures to come, such as the terrorist activity in the Sahel or the Caucasus conflict that is already a reality. China is present in the Asian countries, Russia is present in the Mediterranean countries, and Turkey is playing to be an important power taking this opportunity. So we are going to have strong leaders but weak institutions in the future. If we take into account companies and the economy as a whole, we can say that the pandemic has caused important damages. The GDP of most of the countries have decreased, and it could be devastating in comparison with the Great Depression. It's the first financial crisis that is global. 3 out of the 119 countries monitored by the International Monetary Fund will have an increase, such as China. So the future needs to take into account a post-COVID resilience, as this meeting is going to reflect. We don't believe in a kind of asymmetric recovery. We believe that this is going to have an uncertain length in time. This also happens with the future of energy and climate. In the translation of the program of the roundtable, we quote the director of the Energy Agency, Philippe, who believes that this COVID crisis is going to mean an acceleration. It's like a future postcard, an image about what is going to be the industry in some years. This image includes a geopolitical landscape that is very uncertain too, and that is going to cause a lot of uncertainties of the to the main leaders of the countries, such as Algeria or Venezuela, for example. Current prices are going to have modifications in the main states of the world. We have to add the uncertainty of the United States presidency elections and the future of the energy industry of the United States and the European Union, which will be different depending on the winner of the American elections. The European Union is in favor of a Green Deal and a green recovery to overcome the crisis. Investment of those vectors is also going to be very important and will affect the investment plan of the European Union in terms of what is going to happen in other countries. This process includes the Instituto Elcano and other think tanks like the ETH in France and many institutions in Poland and Germany. The truth is that in the last months, social behaviors have been very important, and I was a professor at the university. The truth is that according to the last Instituto Elcano survey, in the first weeks of the pandemic, the fight against climate change, again, is one of the priorities in terms of foreign policy for Spanish people. 60% of Spanish people think that we are facing a climate emergency. With regards to the items in the budget for 2020-2026, Spanish people think that the main priorities will have to be the investment in technology and investment in renewable energies. We have to include the problem of safety and security in terms of health, of course. So it is very important to take into account psychology and sociology to face the climate and energy challenges. There are many topics that we need to discuss in the coming months, but I would like to conclude by thanking the effort of everyone who have made this meeting possible. Our host, Philippe Boisseau, and his team in Cepsa, including Íñigo Díaz de Espada, the president of CECME. I want to thank Maria Victoria Zingoni. I want to congratulate her for being named as the president of the club, and also her team. You know that Elcano Institute is going to be with you to cooperate with all your team in this activity as usual. This year we also have to thank you especially because you are going through difficult times. It's the most difficult meeting in which we have participated in, so our collaboration shows the seriousness and the important moment we are going through. It's the most difficult time that we have analyzed in this institute, and I think that we are going to be 20 years of age in the next year. We need to multiply our age by 7, as it happens with dogs. But before concluding my presentation, I have to express my wish to be with you next year, to have a toast, if possible, without masks. Thank you very much, and we will see you next year. Thank you very much.
Por favor, presidente.
We're going to leave the floor now to María Victoria Zingoni, president of the Spanish Energy Club. Good morning, everyone. First of all, to the Director and CEO of Cepsa, Philippe Boisseau, to Chairman of Elcano Royal Institute, Emilio, Lamo, Espinosa, and the Secretary General of the World Energy Council, Wilkinson. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good day to everyone. It's an honor to be here with you in the annual event of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council. First of all, I would like to thank Cepsa and Philippe Boisseau for supporting us and allowing us for the 4th year in a row to have this event in their building. And thank you, Philippe, for all the kind words that you have given us. We know we count on your support. Thank to Emilio, Chairman of Elcano Royal Institute. Thank you for the support that you always give to the ENERCLUB, for being our strategic ally in a project. We've been working together for the last 13 years, so thank you for that as well. And to our special speaker today, our guest speaker, Dr. Wilkinson, Secretary General of the World Energy Council, the body where we were part of that body through the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council. Thank you, both of you, for being here. And I would also like to thank everyone that has made this possible, our moderators, our speakers, everyone who is here listening to us today. Thank you to everyone that has worked so hard to make this possible. Sometimes one thinks that a virtual meeting is an easy thing to do, isn't it? It seems easier than a normal meeting, but the truth is that it's full of tricky things and complications that are new to us. So I would really like to congratulate and thank the president of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council, Íñigo Díaz de Espada, and all of the different elements and companies that have made this possible today. Thank you. As Philippe has already mentioned, and Emilio as well, today probably what is the key element in any agenda is the effects and the impact of the pandemic. A pandemic that the only thing that we're sure of is that it will continue to be a problem for us. There's a lot of uncertainty. When will this end? What will be the full final effect and impact on the different sectors and industries of the economy? And as Emilio mentioned, the different elements that will play a key role in the recovery. There are some things that we know, for sure at least, and it's the fact that the transition towards a sustainable energy model will be key for that financial recovery. And if we think about this in a positive light, This transition has been at the core of all the recovery policies, and I think that is something that has a lot of value for our industry, and we have to leverage these policies. The European Union has the net zero GHG emissions for 2050. There has never been so much consensus in terms of the pathway that we have to follow. We have a guide map, a roadmap that we should follow, but that doesn't mean that there are no challenges in our way. There are huge challenges ahead, in fact, and as Philippe mentioned, and I would like to focus on that element again, we have to work, all of us together, all the stakeholders, all the industries in any economy, all the companies have to work together to develop new technologies, to develop innovation, and to be leaders of the process. We need the financial industry that will work as a channel for all of the investments that will require. And of course, we'll need the citizens that will have to change, to adapt their behaviors, the way they do their consumption of products and goods, and these trends will change, and all these efforts will also require the support of the public sector. Administrations, governments will have to implement all of these policies while fostering this growth, this investment, this development in the national industry. As has already been mentioned, these different recovery plans for both the financial recovery but also for the development of the industries will be fundamental at all levels for us. This is a unique moment for us. All of the different members of the European Union, including Spain, has a huge responsibility. We need to do an adequate management of the funds that we will be receiving. It's in our hands to be able to actually profit from these funds, creating new employment options and not leaving anyone behind. If we all work together, if we align our efforts, we can do this. The Spanish government knows the situation, has presented a plan to channel all of these funds, and understands that we, the energy industry, are one of the key lines for this plan. We have climate objectives and targets, but in order to comply with the Paris Accords, we need to work harder and faster. Not just us, different regions in the world need to do so as well. In the last few weeks, we've seen some statements that are going in the right direction. So we hope that we can give a good example to convince other countries, because it's something that we have to do all together if we want to offer a better future for the next generations. And by better future, I'm talking about a more just, sustainable and safer future for all of the new generations. Here at the Spanish Energy Club, we'll continue to work, to help, to add what we can do with events like the one today, understanding what is going on in our country, but what is going on in the rest of the world as well. So we're going to have a roundtable on the impact of the COVID-19 in our sector, but also the potential recovery scenarios. And this is something that will integrate everyone. And this is what we do. We integrate. We open our doors. It doesn't matter where you come from, what sector, what country, what political party you're from. Our idea is to integrate all the voices. So we have a guest speaker today, Dr. Angela Wilkinson, Secretary General and Executive Director of the World Energy Council since November of 2019.
It's a pleasure to have you here for the first time in this event of our Spanish committee. Your role in this very complicated time of the world is being key for the development and implementation of the new WEC strategy. With a strong focus on your great passion, I think it is one of your greatest interests at this point, that is the humanization of the energy. Our future will depend to a large extent on how society reacts to the challenges that we have ahead. So I find this approach is really important and challenging. So thank you for sharing it with us. No me extiendo más, nada más.
Without further ado, I just hope that you will learn a lot from the event today, and I'm sure you will. Thank you everyone again for making this possible, and I'm going to leave the floor to the next speaker.
Muchísimas gracias. Pasamos directamente.
Thank you very much. We are going to give the floor to Angela Wilkinson. Do you have her curriculum?
For the very warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I should start off by saying hola, buenos dias. That's where my Spanish takes me to. I would like to thank the organisers for what is a challenging event to put on, and also to thank Philippe for his comments around justice and responsibility, for Emilio for calling out the need for collaboration across frontiers, and for Maria for your words around cooperation across many sectors, public, private, as well as, of course, energy and other industries. And it's a pleasure to be here and to join this inaugural session on energy and climate futures, recovery and resilience post-COVID-19. Now, today I'm speaking to you from my home in Oxford. We're all learning to adapt to this global health crisis, including my 86-year-old father who lives in Andalusia. Today, I would like to offer my reflections on the bigger picture of the current crisis and what this implies for the challenges ahead, and as Maria said, for my passion and commitment to this new vision to humanise energy. Let me start by reminding everyone of the origins of the World Energy Council and, of course, our Spanish member committee. In 1924, we started up as the World Power Conference when the world was recovering from the first global influenza pandemic and about to face the Great Depression. Ça change plus ça change, as they say in France. Now, the COVID-19 has dramatically changed our world. We often forget that energy is essentially a story of humanity. It's more than a sector. It's the ultimate connector of hopes and fears, of people and geography across the world. This crisis reminds us of the importance of energy in our lives, and it's shown us that individual actions can have global impacts. Lockdown has triggered a widespread pattern of working from home and greater use of digital technology. Crisis has also given us an experience of a different energy future, clearer skies and quieter, uncongested city streets. And even as the world came to a stop, the lights have stayed on. Now, we've seen huge drops in demand for fossil fuels, especially for transport, and a shift in demand for power from industry and offices to households. And whilst we should expect some permanent destruction of demand in some places, we must also prepare for the return of global energy demand growth. In fact, there could be a tsunami of pent-up demand. This crisis is a brutal shock on an already stressed world energy system. Economic recession, climate change momentum, and the unevenness of societies were already creating huge tensions within the worldwide energy system. Resilience has been tested. Recovery will not be easy, and any hope of transformation will involve massive financial capital reallocation. There is a new context of affordability and social justice. Billions of lives and hundreds of trillions of dollars are at stake. And an even bigger picture is the essential place to start if we really want to emerge from this crisis as stronger, connected energy societies and successfully managing global energy transition. No crisis happens in a vacuum. The energy industry, our industry, is grappling with a new era of transition, energy for people and planet and prosperity. During the 24th World Energy Congress in Abu Dhabi just last October, we noted that value generation is moving closer to the end user, and we highlighted a shift in leadership mindset from the supply-side thinking to a customer-centric energy system. we've added a fourth D to the 3 global drivers of change that we have been tracking for over a decade. The 4 Ds are decarbonisation, potentially enabling a climate-neutral energy system by 2050. We see those ambitions by China, by Europe, and by increasing numbers of countries and companies. Decentralisation, accelerating the pace of distributed and renewable energy production. Digitalisation, enabling a step change in energy efficiency and improvement in energy assets and processes. The fourth D, disruption as usual, reflects a new pattern of innovation and collaboration shaped by demand-driven solutions. It reflects that the ways in which energy is being used, traded and transported are changing faster than ever before, with implications for supply and production. In the midst of this ongoing global health emergency, we must remain pragmatic in delivering energy for people and planet and prosperity. Transition is a balancing act, and there is no one size fits all. Different regions in the world will vary in their focus on these Ps, depending on their socio-economic circumstances. The how to secure clean, affordable, reliable and equitable energy transition for Africa and Asia might not be right and the same as for Europe and vice versa. The challenges of navigating this new era of energy transition remind us that energy does not lend itself to single issue thinking. Today's single issue energy fashion, and there have been many, is the so-called race to zero. Societies need us to help them join the dots. This is why we created the World Energy Trilemma Index over a decade ago. This practical and objective tool is designed to help energy leaders across the world to balance the need for energy security, affordability and equity, and environmental sustainability as they strive to build and change their underlying energy systems. Now, Spain ranks 15th on the most recent global index and is maintaining steady improvement. It's a healthy place to start when we think about recovery. Now, as we have done for nearly 100 years, our members in over 100 countries have been sharing their experiences, actions and outlooks through this crisis. Our regular worldwide surveys reveal different and shifting priorities for action. Crisis has added a new emphasis on resilience, which extends to include people and supply chains, and even bigger hopes about the role for a clean hydrogen vector. There are many different perspectives on how long it will take to recover from peak crisis and what the next normal will look like. Societies are not aiming to bounce back to before crisis, but want to invest in building back better. To help leaders with the essential job of recovery, our global community has rapidly developed an impartial set of 4 COVID crisis scenarios to 2024. They're called Pause, Rewind, Fast Forward and Re-Record. You can find them on our website. Each scenario explores 3 critical uncertainties about trust, about ambition, and our ability to control the virus, and how these uncertainties might combine and impact recovery. We've used these scenarios to build the first World Energy Transition Radar. Martin Young, the Council's Senior Director of Insights, will share more in the next panel about how we are helping energy leaders to use these crisis scenarios and radar tools to improve their recovery plans. Now, innovation and cooperation, as previous speakers have already said, remain the keys to successful recovery and transformation, and both are changing. Innovation is not the same as progress. The difference is what we call the Humanized Energy Challenge. Our pragmatic community is now focused on how to humanize energy. The Council is reaching out to effectively engage many and more diverse people and communities in new energy ecosystems. We are promoting a new approach to collaborative innovation to help connected energy societies to move further and faster together and from different starting points. There is the need for many and more diverse solutions to net zero carbon and the need for more diverse investment opportunities. Let me be clear. We are working to inspire a next era of improvements in quality for life for all. We have to help societies better understand that new and inspiring models of human and economic development, digital, circular, clean and just, will require more energy, at least in the medium term. Now, I believe it takes a whole community to build and change an entire energy system. I believe that we, the world energy community, can engage regional, technological, and societal diversity as strengths. Only by working pragmatically and inclusively as the world energy community to humanize energy can we keep the future of connected energy societies open to better solutions and inspire new possibilities for humanity. Now, while this event focuses discussions on what's happening across Europe and in Spain, I hope the Council's ability to provide the bigger picture and exchange deeper insights can avoid what happens in Europe staying in Europe. Companies, countries and communities can and should learn with and from each other. There aren't many organisations that have not only survived but thrived for over 100 years like the World Energy Council. We formed before the United Nations, and whilst I speak from Oxford in England, our strength as the world energy community has been to work across all frontiers and to build practical capabilities, something that some governments continue to struggle with. I shall be looking closely at the outputs from this important virtual gathering, and I congratulate my colleagues at the Spanish Member Committee, and I thank CESPA and the Spanish Energy Club for hosting this event. It's an important conversation at the right time, and it's congratulations for trying to do it virtually. I look forward to liaising with my colleagues in CMCE on how to take forward your exchange of better solutions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you all.
For your presentation, and now, y ahora pasamos directamente.
And now we go to the round table with Diego Rodríguez as the moderator. We'll be talking about the impact of COVID-19 in the energy sector and possible recovery scenarios. He is Professor of Economy of the University Complutense of Madrid. He is a member of the Research and Competency. He works as well at FEDEA. He's been working in research as well as the universities of Cambridge, Woolwich. He's been as well, additionally, a technical supervisor of the Survey and Business Strategy for over 15 years and a co-editor of the Applied Economy magazine. He was member of the board of the National Commission of Markets and Competition and the Regulatory Supervision Committee.
Everyone to this roundtable of the annual event of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council. The aim of this roundtable is to address the challenges faced by the energy sector in the new context of the COVID crisis, and how this crisis can be a catalyst to accelerate the alignment of energy policies, business strategies, and the behaviors of citizens with the fight against climate change. Although we are in times of uncertainty, we know that the expectation that we had some few months ago have changed. I believe that this table is a good opportunity to share different perspectives from the European institutions, businesses, and energy organizations. In that sense, we are very lucky to have today with us 4 outstanding speakers in this roundtable, and it's my pleasure to introduce them to you. Let me summarize a lot her extensive curricula with fruitful professional careers in all cases. First, Yolanda Garcia, Yolanda is PhD in economics at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. She worked as economic advisor at the Spanish National Regulatory Authority for 8 years. And since 2009, Yolanda is working for the European Commission in the Directorate General for Energy. Currently, she is Deputy Head of Unit on Strategy and Policy Coordination. Second, Birte Brun-Leon is Director of the Iberia Department within the Operation Directorate of the European Investment Bank, the EIB. She started her career in 1992 at Deutsche Bank, in international corporate and structured finance areas, but joined the EIB in 2003. And in her current position, Birte is responsible for ESB lending operation in the public and private sector for Spain and Portugal. Later, María Mindeluce. Maria is PhD in Energy Economics and CEO of the Women Business Coalition that, as you know, brings together several international organizations committed to accelerate the transition to a zero carbon economy. She was formerly Managing Director at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and held senior position at the Economic Bureau of the Spanish Prime Minister, Iberdrola, and the International Energy Agency, among others. Finally, Martin Young. Martin is Senior Director, Business Insight and Scenarios at the World Energy Council. Previously, Martin served as Director of Policy and Risk, leading the work on the energy trilemma and dynamic risk. He joined the Council in 2017 after spending 5 years at the International Energy Agency, where he led the Emergency Policy Division. So I say I have summarized a lot her extensive curricula. Thank you again, all of you, for being here today. And we have agreed that the structure of the roundtable will be as follows. First, each participant will present some main ideas for a few minutes, 5, 6 minutes at the beginning. Later, I will introduce some questions in order to motivate a dialogue. And finally, we will open the floor to the audience. And I encourage all of you to introduce questions by using this little platform. We have 1 hour in total. We will follow initially the same order than in the program. So, Yolanda, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Diego. Good morning. Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be here today in this very interesting roundtable, so thank you very much for the invitation. I think just to set the context, we know the impact of the COVID-19 on the economy, so it has been a huge economic impact, all global-wide. The EU has been affected, but also in particular countries in the south of Europe, like Spain, France, Italy, Portugal, have been highly affected. The impact of COVID has been also seen in the energy sector. In particular, has been a drop in the energy demand during the confinement, but as well, we have seen in a positive note that renewables have proved more resilient during the COVID-19 crisis. And they have increased the participation in the gross inland energy consumption, but also in the participation in the electricity mix. So this is very positive element due to the drop of the fossil fuel participation, in particular because of travel restriction or because the reduction of the consumption in the industry. This seems a very good starting point to switch to the European Green Deal as a new growth strategy aiming to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050. So we see that this unprecedented crisis with an unprecedented response in Europe in order to address this economic crisis. The European Commission proposed in May an enormous recovery package that has been endorsed by the European Council in July and now is under discussion both the multi-financial framework, but in particular with a new fund that has been created due to the crisis, that is the Next Generation EU, which is around in total 1.8 trillion euro for the next period of 2021-27. In particular, for the Next Generation EU, there is an important envelope, which is called the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is around 672 billion euro, with the clear aim to help member states to put forward investment and reform linked to the green and digital transition. So here is the first time that we see really the political willingness to ensure that part of the money for the recovery is going to be invested in order to transform the economy, to make the economy greener, and to ensure that we reach this 2050 climate neutrality target. So the idea is not to revert to the situation as existed before COVID-19, is to take this opportunity for the green transformation, driving the EU towards this climate neutrality objective. For this reason, at least 30% of the Next Generation EU will go to the green and sustainable projects. In more concrete terms, for this Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is part of the Next Generation EU, 37% of the expense should be allocated in this climate-related investment. This is an important amount of money. In total, for the Recovery and Resilience Facility, will represent around 249 billion for this climate mainstream, which is huge and is a very good opportunity. Why energy is an important component in the Recovery and Resilience Facility? Because we don't have to forget that energy production and consumption represent around 75% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's important. And because we have in front of us the 2030 climate and energy target. So the preparation of the Recovery and Resilience Facility could be used in order to achieve the 2030 and the 2050 targets that we have in front of us. We need to recall as well that recently the Commission has proposed a more ambitious target for 2030, what is called at least 55% of greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030. Basically, what the Commission has published recently, 17 of September, is what is called Climate Target Plan. To ensure to reach 2050, we need to have a more ambitious target for 2030. So instead, the 40% of today, the greenhouse gas emission reduction would be 55% if endorsed by the Council in December. So for this more ambitious target, there is also as well a huge amount of investments to be done in the coming years in the energy sector. In total, the Commission has estimated for the decade 2021-2030 of around 260 billion per year more compared to the previous decade. In addition, if we put on top this more ambitious target, it means that around would be 350 billion per year more than compared to the previous decade. So it's a huge amount of investments in order to reach this ambitious target. So the funds, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, could be seen as a very good instrument to reach these ambitious targets. Second, there is an important component in the green transition, is the possibility to trigger sustainable jobs, growth, and European leadership. And this is very important element. Why? Because it could be investments oriented to energy priority areas. For example, deployment of renewables, including hydrogen, where Europe has a huge potential, but also to all related infrastructure that facilitate the integration of renewables. For example, storage, modernization of the electricity grids, enhanced interconnectivity. Of course, system integration, integrate the sectors. It implies as well an important volume of investments that could be coming or could be partly funded by the European funds. Facilitate the decarbonization of the gas sector is key as well, with the production of biogas, biomethane, biofuels that could be as well pushed for green transition, but also to revert in jobs and growth. Building renovation is an energy priority area where as well has a clear impact in terms of positive impact in terms of local jobs and employment, jobs and growth in Europe. And clean mobility is another area which is an important to help the transformation of the economy and to put money in these areas. Just to give you an idea, IRENA has recently published a report where it estimates that each €1,000,000 invested in renewables or energy flexibility will create at least 25 jobs. In the case of the €8,000,000 invested in efficiency will create about 10 jobs. This is just to give an idea the employment creation of these climate neutrality investments. Clean technologies are also important in terms of promote the European leadership and makes Europe more resilient. And here we have a huge potential because the European industry holds a strong global position in some of key technologies, for example, offshore, solar, storage, hydrogen. And these technologies will have major scaling up potential over the coming years. We need to take advantage of this. If we go to more concrete action, we'll go to the step of recovery and resilience plans. So in Europe, the Recovery and Resilience Facility is going to facilitate the recovery of the member states, and it's going to do it in order to member states, they need to prepare plans where they have to identify the reforms and investments to address the existing challenge. So important is like the recovery and resilience plans should be submitted to the Commission. There is the possibility to submit the draft plans by since 15 October, and the final plans are due to April 2021. So now member states are in the process of preparing the draft plans in order to incorporate all the elements, reforms and investments that could be front-loaded in the next years. Because an important element is the time frame. Because the aim of the instrument is to recover the economy, all the investments, all the reforms should have a very short time frame. It's up to 2023. But the disbursement of the investment could be done until 2026. So keep in mind projects that could be immediately front-loaded and help the economy to recover. Once the Commission will receive the plans, the Commission will have 2 months to assess the plans, and when the plans would be assessed, the countries will receive immediately the financial contribution. So maybe just to give a short indication that the Commission has already published guidance to facilitate the preparation of the plans by the Member States, has identified as well what is called flagships, areas where the Member States have all common challenge, and they have as well investment opportunities with clear creation of employment and growth. This is what is called flagships. Two of them are related of energy, is what is called Power Up, is to deploy renewables, as I mentioned before, and to integrate the renewables and deploy hydrogen, clean hydrogen. The second flagship is Renovate, is all the huge potential to build in renovation and to increase the rate of building renovation. The current is less than 1% and to double by 2030. This is the aim, and this is to put money for increase the renovation, which is important not only because it's going to be more efficient, it's also because we are going to tackle one important problem in Europe, that is energy poverty. So with all the elements taken in mind, I would like as well to highlight that the Commission has already assessed the national energy and climate plans that Member States have submitted last year, and this is a very good starting point for the Member States when they prepare the plans, because they have already identified in these NECPs what are the priority areas, reforms, and investments that could be immediately front-loaded and they could contribute to achieve the 2030 climate and energy targets. So last but not least, I have to mention that this is an interactive process where the Member State can submit the plans, but the Commission is going to give a first preliminary assessment to ensure that the Member States, when they prepare the plans, are not alone, and the plans at the end of the day fit for the purpose, and as soon as the plans are finalized, the Member State can start receiving the money, because the idea is to recover the economy as soon as possible. I want to finalize my intervention, mention that Spain has already presented, the government presented the plan, 17th of October, and this is a good starting point with concrete projects and reforms in order to provide growth in order to provide and to create employment. So this is the starting point. Now Spain should submit the draft plan to the European Commission. So what is already done is publicly available. What are the intention of the Spanish government in terms of what could be the priority areas where the recovery and resilience plan would be articulated. So we think it's a very good starting point, and of course we are looking forward the plan that Spain submits, and of course we remain available for any questions, because as I mentioned, it's an interactive process, the preparation of the plan, to ensure that the plans at the end of the day fit for the purpose to facilitate the green transformation of our economies. This is an opportunity, the recovery is an opportunity to make our economies greener and more resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yolanda, for your initial presentation. And next, Birce Bru-León, as I said previously, Director of the Iberia Department in the EIB. So, Birce.
Sí, muchas gracias, Diego. Buenos días a todos y muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Cepsa and the Elcano Institute for the organization of this roundtable and the invitation to present our role in the recovery in the long and medium term. As the European Investment Bank, EIB answers to the demand that we have each moment, and the demand itself is a reflection of the financial environment and political realities, both national and European. And therefore, when the pandemic started at the beginning of the year, we made an immediate effort to contribute to a financial recovery in the smoothest and fastest way. This effort consisted, on the one hand, in the speed of our plans for the for financing small and medium-sized companies to make them more flexible, and we wanted to introduce an express recovery process. We also increased the financing possibilities in the health system so they could face the expenses caused by the COVID crisis. In this way, up to now, the Investment Bank, the European Investment Bank, has approved 30 operations related to COVID in Spain with $5 billion. We have given $3 billion right now. After my presentation, after this information, I want to say that we are deploying the Guarantee Fund to support European companies. This is a solidarity instrument between the member states with around 25 billion euros as a guarantee to leverage the total financing. With these assistance for companies and the sectors that were more or most affected by the pandemic. As my colleague said before, the short-term measures will not be enough if they are not accompanied by measures that allow for a sustainable growth of the economies in the medium and long term. It is also necessary to have more investment from the public and private side to improve the capitalization of economies and to transform them. That's why we need to act in key and strategic sectors. The carbonization of economies plays an important role in this effort for the modernization of economies. We need to guarantee the internalization of negative impacts associated to intensive process in carbon to have an efficient use and a fairer use of energy. We are prepared to support the transformation of European economies and to guarantee that the recovery is translated into a sustainable growth in time that is respectful with the environment and that allows us to move forward in the social and financial process that we are in. And the European Union, this bank, was created to support this type of processes. That's why we believe that it's more important than ever to have an immediate response to the climate and energy emergency with an acceleration of the process. The bank approved last year a plan to increase financing for the climate of action, moving from the 25% current 50% to 50% until 2025, and to guarantee that financing processes agree with the Paris Agreement and with the do not harm principle. Currently, we are at a process of finishing the profiling of the strategy to have these objectives in mind and to approve the strategy by the end of the year. One of the first decisions that we made and implemented was to divide our financing policy in the energy lending policy that includes the abandonment of the financing of fossil fuels. So the truth is that not all the sectors have the same penetration as the energy sector. The energy system needs to be flexible to guarantee the fulfillment and the compliance with all activities. So this sector is key for the competitiveness of companies and to increase the capacity of adaptation of the different stakeholders. In the last years, we have been witness of a great transformation of the sector, characterized by changes in the regulation, new production models, new consumption models, and also changes in the financing models. And in spite of all the changes, we don't need to say that we have already finished. We need to guarantee the supply. We need to take the environmental impact into account as a whole, and also the financing of all areas that I've already mentioned, and also the national plan of Spanish energy forecasts necessary investment of 240 billion in the next 10 years. Energy has played a very important role in the financing activity of the GDP, of the bank, and the truth is that we have invested since 1981 more than 22 billion euros. We've been working, and we are going to continue working in a lot of areas, such as the area of the expansion and modernization, digitalization of the grids, taking into account renewable energy with all types of technology, eolic, biomass, etc. We are very interested in R&D activities of the companies for developing new technology and for the modernization of production processes to make them more sustainable and compatible with the environment. And also other sectors such as energy efficiency of buildings and a very important area which is the clean transport. The railroad, the subways, metros, etc. need to be cleaner. So we are constantly adapting and changing the financing instruments that we have according to the different types and clients that we have, and also according to the demand. I want to highlight, among all the innovations that have already taken place, the Green Energy Loan, which is a tool, a label for renewable projects or energy efficiency related projects. We've also introduced models for financing projects that are risky, and we have also deployed different tools for small and medium-sized companies in green mortgages, for example, and digitalization projects. Our priorities are the same in our case and are aligned with the policies of the Commission and the needs identified in the National Plan of Climate and Energy. our investment plans have different objectives, such as the encouragement of the projects for investors, and also to have a greater efficiency in the long term. We are not looking for short-term saving plans. And if I use behavioral economics language, the truth is that we are in a certain way developing or deploying tools to have an influence in the promoter's behavior to act and invest now to be beneficial in the future. So in our plans, our investments, we're going to have different exchange rates and different types of loans and different financing tools such as loans and shares in the long term, because we want to be we want to adapt to the financial situation, and in general we appreciate the generalization effect and the quality that we give to our promoters to analyze their projects, not only from the financial point of view, but also from the environmental and social perspective. If you have any question, I can give more details in the debate. Thank you.
Next, María Mendiluce, CEO of the Women Business Coalition. María, the floor is yours.
Hola, muchas gracias.
Hello, my presentation was in English, but Berthe was speaking Spanish so greatly, but I'll do it in English.
I was with you, I think, last year, participating in the Cepsa Tower. I was really keen to collaborate with ENERCLUB. I've been collaborating with them for many, many years already. And so a pity that we can't see each other only virtually. But we're very lucky to be able to see each other virtually as well. And thanks a lot for everybody that has prepared this event, which always poses some challenges. So it's also a pleasure to be speaking after such a distinguished group of speakers, especially those that are now going to activate the economies with the green packages. And from the business perspective, these are very much welcome. I work for the Women Business Coalition. This is a new job. I started, I'm the CEO of this coalition since May. Previously, as mentioned, I was with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So I've been working for the past 12 years with business and pursuing a more sustainable energy and climate. And what we are seeing these days, well, I think there is a widespread beliefs that while the COVID crisis is terrible, the climate crisis can be worse. And as Angela pointed, the inequality crisis even bigger. So it would be, I'm sorry to say, stupid that if when planning to get out of this COVID crisis, we don't take into account the climate change and the social crises that we are facing. And hence, we very much welcome the efforts that the European Union is doing in that respect, and Spain as well. So from the business perspective, not only we believe, and we work with many companies, the Women Business Coalition is a coalition of 7 big business organizations, including the World Business Council, but also CDP, Series, BSR, CFG, and a few others. And we work with around 2,000 companies that are committed. We believe that if companies show to policymakers ambitious plans, policymakers will be reassured that when they come with green recovery packages and other policies, that the business is behind, that the business supports more ambitious policies. And in that respect, we have seen what is called the race to zero. And last month, during the Climate Week, we saw many companies statements that they want to be net zero by 2050. And we're talking about the five of the six biggest companies in the world have committed to net zero, not by 2050, even earlier. Of course, those are IT companies, and maybe it's a bit easier, although one could argue that for Amazon it's not that easy, and Amazon has committed to be net zero by 2040. We are seeing at the same time that the governments are not staying shy, and we saw China coming up with a very important statement. And then very recently, yesterday, Prime Minister from Japan. And this, coming from Japan, is quite remarkable that they have committed to net zero and what that will bring, which is inevitably scaling up the use of renewable energy. So in the energy world, we know what needs to be done, and I don't think I need to explain it, but I'll say the main things. First, we need to electrify as much as possible all the energy uses. So whether it's electric transportation, electrifying heating and cooling, or electrifying some of the industrial processes. Then we of course need to make sure that that electricity is clean. And it needs to be net zero by 2050. I would argue that it can be net zero much earlier, given how much the technologies have progressed. The NVGL says that by 2050, solar will be 80% of the energy mix, and 25% by 2030. We have seen that some of these, and we have published a report on the S-curve with micrograph that relates to the exponential nature of these clean technology developments. And we have seen this in renewables. We will see this in electric vehicles with the prices of batteries coming down. And we hope to see this with the prices of electrolyzers for green hydrogen, which is the big thing that we all need to support. And it is the one that will allow us to get to net zero. And of course, this cannot be done without phasing out coal generation, of course, in Europe and all over the world as soon as possible. So as I mentioned before, business is also transitional to this net zero. There are 40 power companies and utilities that have committed to the Science Based Targets Initiative, which is a business standard, standard setter to be aligned with the Paris Agreement and net zero. But we're also seeing, and 5 of which are Spanish, including Acciona. There are 100 cities that have committed, that have said that they have 70% renewable energy in their cities. These include cities like Auckland, Nairobi, or Seattle. And there are 263 companies that have committed to be 100% renewables. And not only they are committed, they are also asking their supply chains to be committed to 100% renewables. And the bank and investors are following suit, and they are announcing many pledges to reallocate their portfolios towards clean investments. So definitely the business community, it's backing a green recovery. It's backing it because it makes a lot of sense. We have done also an analysis, which you can look in our website, that has analyzed if we move the stimulus package and we make them more green, what would that mean for the world, for Europe, for Spain? And the results are remarkable because in all these scenarios, a green recovery brings more jobs, brings more economic growth, and intensively reduces emissions, which is very much needed. So we can talk more during the debate about the results of those reports. But let me tell you that the 5 measures that we have included are the following. We need to increase energy efficiency, and that is going just the classical energy efficiency. We need to look at circular economy and, of course, building restoration. We need to increase renewable energies, obviously. We need to accelerate the deployment of electric vehicles by replacing through scrappage schemes the internal combustion engine vehicles. We need to invest in the grid. And lastly, even if this is not the space to talk about it, we need to plant more trees. And we need to do that in Spain, and we need to do that in Europe. That generates a lot of jobs, and jobs is what many of the society needs today. This is a fundamental factor when making decisions. We need to make sure that they reduce emissions, they boost economic growth, and they create jobs. Thanks a lot, and looking forward to the discussion in the panel.
Thank you, Maria. And finally, we will close the initial presentation with Martin Young. Martin.
Thank you, Diego, and I'm honoured to be on this very distinguished panel. I have a few slides that are going to take you through rather quickly. Firstly, I just wanted to show a slide that Angela has shown us before, and this just reiterates a little bit what Maria was just touching upon, the fact that the pandemic is not an isolated challenge. It's exposing and accelerating other issues that we already know about. There are the economic issues, there are the climate change issues, and the societal unevenness that is really being exposed and that needs to be addressed. On the next slide is also one that Angela has shown as well, but I want to go in a little bit more deeply about what the Council has been doing. As the oldest global community, we've been engaging with our network to try and support energy leaders how to recover better. So what have we been doing? We have been surveying our community to understand the impact and implications, and we've been leveraging our energy foresight capabilities. And from that, we rapidly devised these 4 short-term scenarios that have been differentiated between ambition, collaboration or trust, and control of the virus. Now, we've used these scenarios to build our World Energy Transitions Radar. This app seeks to track signals for the different scenarios. We've tested that with our Future Energy Leaders community, and we launched it publicly at the Clean Energy Ministerial. Now, at our World Energy Leaders Summit, we also piloted our Scenarios Summit. And here we had ministers and energy leaders role-playing different parts for business, investors, government and civil society. And then linking those back to the scenarios, the 4 short-term scenarios. If we move on to the next slide, you'll now see something new. And here we can see some of the results from the World Energy Transitions Radar. Now, this is a snapshot as at the 1st of October, and it's almost got 3,000 signals that it's been tracking. Globally, you can see that there's actually high ambition for more transformative change that's looking beyond reverting back to the pre-pandemic agenda. But there are significant regional differences, and that's based on the different contexts that the regions have. Now, there isn't time to go into this at the moment, but we might well have a little bit of opportunity later. So if I move on to the next slide. Here, this gives a little snapshot from our World Energy Leaders Summit and the scenario playing. The grid on the left-hand side shows the axes of ambition, whether this is transformative or reverting to a pre-pandemic agenda, and on the y-axis, the level of trust, whether there's high level of trust and collaboration or a lower level of trust and less collaboration, where countries want to focus more themselves rather than reaching out. And in the World Energy Leaders Summit that we had where they were playing different roles, you can see that they all came looking actually more on the collaborative side of things. But then we have a split between what they were looking at, what their plans directed towards. So those role-playing investors and governments were looking towards the fast-forward scenario, which is the high ambition and high collaboration. In contrast, business and civil society, while they looked at the high collaboration, their level of ambition was lower. And that was reverting more to the pre-pandemic agenda. Now, the value of these sort of simulations is you then compare them with the things like the scenarios radar. So you can see what are people actually tracking. And here the contrast is quite stark. This was a slightly updated radar as of the 8th of October. So the same time as the role playing. And here we see that the largest, that most signals are for the fast forward agenda, the one of the high ambition, high collaboration, which contrasts very much with the weighted average that we had from the participants, which is for the pause agenda, which on the global signals that we got were only 15%. This just reinforces the importance of being able to look at the scenarios, because we all want our futures to be better, but sometimes the planning may be for one fixed future, and we need to look at all the different permutations. The policies, the investment strategies need to be able to cope with those different versions of the future. So with that, I end my first slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Martin. And thank you, all of you, for your presentations. Now I would like to introduce some short questions about some of the challenges that we face and that you have mentioned in your initial presentation. First, I would like to start with the business perspective. So first, Maria, my first question is for you. Is about if you are really perceiving changes in business strategies towards sustainability in the current context now. And if that would be the case, if you think that firms consider or those changes are structural, or on the contrary, they will be reversed when the pandemic ends.
Past weeks, we have seen a lot of companies committing and presenting their plans to be net zero by 2050 or before. In total, there are more than 1,000 companies that have committed to set science-based targets aligned with what the science says that their sector and company needs to do to be aligned with the 1.5 and the Paris Agreement. It's not only they are developing their plans, they're also writing letters to different institutions, whether it's in the US, in Europe, in Spain, Portugal, Poland. In total, 1,200 companies have reached out to policymakers during the COVID pandemic to tell them that they need to build back better, that we need to put in place a green recovery. And this is providing a very clear signal. I would say even more, when the European Commission was debating whether they should present a plan to reduce emissions by 55% by 2030, 170 companies across Europe sent a very clear letter to Ursula von der Leyen saying that the business community wants them to be more ambitious and would encourage that 55% target. So we see that this crisis, rather than shying away companies, it's rather the opposite. I think companies realize that they need to build resilience. They need to set up plans. And I sometimes hear, no, but this is all greenwashing. Okay, but I mean, if you work with business, you know that when a company presents a plan of this nature, it needs to go through several committees, and including the board of that company that has the overall responsibility. And so these are serious plans. Companies might not have all the solutions, but at least, not at least, but most importantly, they know that this is the direction of travel. And we know that when business put themselves behind an objective and they monitor that and they track it, they often meet those targets and often ahead of time. So that gives a lot of hope, and in my view, this is structural. It's not. It has been influenced by COVID, but it's here to stay because these plans are for the long run.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Martin, you are in an excellent position to observe the diversity in regional approaches to recovery. You have mentioned in the slide, but I would like, if it's possible, to go a little bit deeper in that comparison, and in particular, what is the relative position of the EU, if you could say something about that, because I have seen China versus the EU. It was a little bit strange, China, in that slide for me, with a lot of rewind. But if you could say something about these different regional differences. Sorry, we don't listen to you. We don't hear you.
I'd unmuted and then I was muted. Thank you, Diego. It's The insights tools that the Council has all give a good different regional perspective. So our issues monitor, our World Energy Trilemma, and now the transitions radar. And the transitions radar is particularly helpful on this. Clearly, different countries and regions have very different contexts of the politics, economics, and their energy endowment, which leads to their different perspectives. And that's clearly illustrated here with the chart that I was able to illustrate. Europe has got very high ambition. And there's the two scenarios that I think Europe shows the most are those ones with a high ambition. But it's got to work harder to close the action gap. And there's an interesting point with the other scenarios that's on the European side is there's a balance in ambition. Balance in collaboration. It's not overly optimistic, it's saying that there's going to be a lot of collaboration. It's that midpoint. Now, if you contrast that with, you highlighted China, the one I would actually really highlight is India, which has a very high degree of ambition, comparable to Europe, but a very low level of collaboration. So it's re-record, and it's much more focused on India doing its own thing, which is the historic way that India might well have been operating. And you can contrast those different perspectives with the Middle East, which has also a very high ambition, but at the same time, its perception seems to be very high on trust. And here, I think the context of the low oil price is really important to reflect. Oil producers in the Middle East are very keen to look at circular carbon for reducing emissions. So that means encouraging things like carbon capture and storage. Now, China has set out very ambitious climate change goals, and I think they have their 5-year plan they're going to be announcing this week. I think they have set out their goal for climate neutrality. I think it's actually by 2060 rather than 2050, but I think by 2050 they are wanting to be a first-tier country on their economy. They've got a broad range of policies, but I think what we've seen in the chart is that there is a high. It maybe not be overly ambitious, maybe it's more realistic, but that might well be the timing. And with China, where you have more state control, they can drive things through, so business gets more directed. I think the interesting bit for us in this region will be how the EU Green Deal gets implemented. It's going to need to have a look at a wider set of options to work, to make sure it works with the grain of what some of the countries are planning. And it was very good to hear Yolanda's point about it's going to be an iterative process. There needs to be this context of affordability, of social justice, and making sure, as Bertha pointed out, that there is a favourable investment environment, because so much investment is required. I hope that gives a quick overview.
Thank you. Very interesting, Martin. Birce, tengo una pregunta.
I have a question for you that it might be a bit specific, but also a bit tricky. How can you work in the European Investment Bank combining both objectives that have been included in the energy and climate national plans, like for example in the Spanish plan or any other of the different member states plan, take into consideration priorities that are part of the recovery framework, but also the different policies that you mentioned before, energy policy lending of the European Investment Bank. How do you mix all of this together? Is there a moment when there's an incompatibility between all of these, or everything works fine together? Well, thank you, Diego, There's a lot of different elements, it's true. But there's not a dichotomy or contradiction between these different elements. I don't know if you prefer me to speak in Spanish or English, because I feel like an outlier. Everyone's speaking English and I'm speaking Spanish. I don't know what you prefer. Your Spanish is perfect, so if you want to continue in Spanish, that's fine. Well, what you were saying, the national plans, the different European Investment Bank policies, all of these are these pieces of the same jigsaw puzzle. They have to be implemented in the short term. But as Yolanda mentioned at the very beginning, this is all supported on the structural needs of these economies in the long and mid-term requirements of these economies. So the idea is to improve and to consolidate this growth pattern that should be sustainable. So it's not just about getting out of the crisis, whatever it takes, but to do it properly, to make sure that we are setting the standards for quality in the next few years. So the four main pillars of the recovery and resiliency Spanish plan, or at least what we know of the plan for now, has to do with the green transition, the working socially with all the different territories, and the gender coalition. So all of these objectives, the idea of creating quality growth, everything is perfectly aligned with our own policies and the different sectors. So this works because as a public bank, as we are, our objectives, our targets, are focusing on specific projects where we assess not just the financial aspects, profitability of the projects, of course, but also the financial profitability in its whole, how this project will impact the climate, the social pacts, and the other industries. In the last few months, and I would even add in the last few years, we've been already working in Spain intensively in order to identify projects that will foster the climate transition, and we are also trying to work together with the national climate plans in the different member states, specifically in Spain, as we are today talking with the Spanish committee, but we want to add value in terms of facilitating funding for investments that will match the national and European policies. And we also aim to stimulate the development of new technologies, as already has been mentioned, for example, regarding hydrogen or battery production, materials for this battery production, and any other new technology that could come and help with this transition. Thank you, Beth. And finally, before we open the option to public questions, I would ask a very specific question for Yolanda.
It's about what is the purpose of the reform of the new energy diplomacy action plan proposed by the German presidency?
Thank you very much, Diego. I can speak in Spanish. It's as well very strange for me to do it in English, but yeah. So basically, I mean, this is something that is still on progress. So what I can say is basically what is the importance of this external policy and the European diplomacy, and this particular in this context. So basically, it's just to use all the instruments at hand to ensure that we speak with one voice in Europe on energy and climate, but we also help to raise the global ambition. So let's say the Europe Europe has a very clear target with the decarbonization by 2050, but we need to ensure that we are not alone in this fight against the climate change. So this is exactly what we try with the new energy diplomacy. So basically it's to translate the vision of the law, the energy transition, the energy transformation, the low emissions and clean technologies to the rest of the world. So I think what is important as well to highlight is just to create business opportunities. I mentioned before the EU industrial leadership, and Birte and colleagues have mentioned in the presentation, I mean, different technologies where Europe has a clear leadership in solar, in offshore, hydrogen, and we need to use this potential to create business opportunity outside Europe, and to export our technology, to export our know-how. And this should be done through this energy diplomacy, what it implies to have a contact with different regions in the world and to express and to engage them in what we are doing and to seek basically opportunities for Europe. And this is an important because at the end of the day, it's going to revert to create job and growth in Europe. One aspect that has been seen during COVID-19 was this value chains and the resilience of value chains. If the components are coming from other parts of the world, let's say China, when the China started with lockdown, we immediately experienced in Europe problems to receive materials that were important components for the clean technologies. So this is something that we need to improve, and that's the reason that we need to make our Europe more resilient. This is the idea as well behind. Of course, in this EU diplomacy, we count as well forward-looking risk. So traditionally, we have included what we call energy security, and basically has been how to diversify resources in Europe, diversify suppliers, diversify routes, and basically was linked to the natural gas and coming from different regions, and in particular with a clear focus on Russia, which is the major supplier for Europe. So now we have another aspect of the energy dimension, that is raw materials. We mentioned different technologies like batteries, for example, but we need to think about lithium and other raw materials that they are not in Europe. So the energy diplomacy should also cover other challenges that we are going to have in the production of clean technology. So this should be covered as well in this new diplomacy. And other aspects that they are related as well, and it's forward-looking because it's cybersecurity, very important, very clear, and important because it's linked to the digitalization of the economy and digitalization of the energy sector. So all these elements should be included in the proposal of the European diplomacy. So it's just to give a little bit hint what is coming next and what are the most important elements that should be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. Now I'm going to go to the audience, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, but please, I will ask you a short answer if it's possible. The first question is for Martin. Martin, do you think the pandemic has opened a parenthesis on the pressure for society to climate change? And will it come back stronger?
Interesting question. I think that the pandemic has really exposed some of the problems that are already existing, for example, on the societal unevenness. Now, whether that has woken up more people to climate change or not, I think in certain areas, for example, I would say that Europe already believes that climate change is an issue and needs to be addressed. Other areas are less persuaded, and you need to see about their context. For example, in Africa, they're going to be focusing on energy access, first of all. But I think there are ways that it can be considered. We can look at trying to recover better, to make sure that where countries that are trying to improve, for example, their energy access, that the lower carbon technologies can be incentivized. So that's where I think there are potential win-wins if people can look at trying to find the right investment frameworks, and very important to actually get the right market design. so that can encourage suitable technologies that look at the different aspects of security, equity, and sustainability.
Okay, thank you, Martin. And a final question for Birce. Birce, a question from Curro Laverón. ¿Qué cambios habrá en el...
What changes would you see in the European Investment Bank to be the climate bank, including the Green Deal, and what does it really mean? What does it really mean? Well, as I said before, the bank has decided to have a much more ambitious objective in the area of climate support and environmental support that now was 25% of our activities, and we have the hope to reach 50% of our activities devoted to energy and climate activities. We are in the process of defining a plan that is going to be approved at the end of the year to get deep into different sectors to determine the support areas and initiatives in the bank, and to establish those areas that we cannot support any longer in the future. And this includes fossil fuels, because we are going to follow an emission performance standard for generation plan that cannot exceed 250 grams per kilowatts hour, and we are going to, or we expect to have the same in the transport sector for light vehicles and light fleets, to essentially encourage the use and the electrification of the system and the sustainability of it. Of course, there is a long way to go. In Spain, we have already started in the last years a process of supporting and having a very close dialogue with our leaders and with our clients. Most of them are our clients and have been our clients for so many years. And we have noticed that the truth is that there is a shared and mutual interest in this regard. The public sector and the private sector want to have a dialogue, and this includes companies, banks, etc., where nobody is out of the process. Everyone wants to be want to go into the green direction, into developing more green projects in Spain. In 2015, which was a year impacted by the previous financial crisis or recession, 6% of our activities, just 6% of our activities were related to climate. But last year, 29% of our activities were devoted to climate experiences. So the trend is ascending, and this will continue in the future. Of course, that we are in a constant dialogue with our clients, as I said before, and the best products that we can offer to meet their needs need to have specific characteristics and need to have green elements, such as the green loan that I mentioned before, already implemented with Iberdrola and Endesa. In the project finance market, the truth is that PPA's market is developing, but financing processes include the market. In the bank, we need to see how we can take more risks to support the development of the market of a regulated system, the previous one, and move towards a liberalized one, which is the future ahead. The truth is that many financing companies are starting climate screening projects, risk assessments, to integrate their methodologies in their internal policies. but also in their business policies, which is also something that the bank has started. And the truth is that there are more things to do in the future in this regard. Thank you. Goethe. I'm going to close in Spanish. I want to thank you all. I want to thank all the participants in this roundtable for being with us. I think that this roundtable was very interesting. And the truth is that delayed and we need to close this part. So I want to thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Diego.
We're running out of time, sorry about that, but we're going to have our last dialogue, so please be patient with us. We just want to keep you here interested in a new topic for a little bit longer. So now we need to understand how SMEs, freelancers and citizens will also see all of these different aspects. So we're going to have a dialogue about people, how citizens are facing these challenges. So we have Dr. Loreto Barrios, who's a researcher, an architect and a psychologist. She's been working on sustainable technologies. And Stuart Capstick, I hope he's with us, although albeit virtually. Yes, he's here with us.
Stuart is Deputy Director del Center for Climate Change and Social Transformation. Colabora con el team del Center for Climate Change Research e investiga habitualmente en lo que es el comportamiento del individuo hacia el cambio climático.
He is working with the Tyndall Center for Climate Change Research and an author of the Lancet Countdown on Health and Climate Change. So first of all, what would be the first thing that we should consider? What would be the consumption trends, the behavioral trends once this is over? Our consumers will want to go towards the zero emissions scenario, or they would want to go back to what they knew before. Loreto first. Well, based on history and even Toynbee, Seneca, and different historians and researchers have talked about how civilizations crawl and collapse, or they survive and grow. Already in the 17th century in Europe, and with rationalism, we've seen that research is not always completely objective. It's something that can be immaterial. It can be full of paradigms. We can talk about Newton physics, we can talk about Einstein and relativity, and then we can talk about quantum physics. So each one of these paradigms is not saying that what came before was wrong. It says, well, no, I can expand on this concept. I can expand on everything that we've learned from. So for many years now, we've seen that the emotional side of things is something that we need. We can research on that. We have functional MRIs that are helping us to see when our brain areas get illuminated depending on the emotions. We are understanding that when we find a community where they are more generous, they tend to live longer. In Japan, people live quite longer, as far as I know at least. In Okinawa, they realized that all of them had this ikigai, this feeling of, I have a mission in life, something that makes you feel motivated to go beyond the basic, the frivolities of the day-by-day. And we've seen that many of these communities that have really long lives, they're also interested in protecting the environment and the society. If we analyze the political perspective, we can also talk about Germany after the wars. That was a situation that can be within certain limits but compared to the situation we're living today. We're in a society that is surrounded by uncertainties. We are in a society that needs a strong leader. Maybe that's not the best leader you can get, but it's a leader that will give you some certainties. And then history will tell you if you were right or wrong selecting that leader, but it will depend on our leaders. Our leaders will make the decisions that will decide our path. According to the development objectives of the United Nations, most of them are talking about human values. And I wanted to show you an image. I was showing it to Inigo before. I don't know if I can show it to you. I'll try to. Let's see if technology helps. Do I have to turn this on? Can you help us, please? So this was the graph more than an image. Sorry about that. This is the trust barometers of 2020. When we talk about our leaders, our societal leaders, today, people trust scientists, not the administration, not the politicians. We keep on seeing our politicians fighting each other to death, almost on television, but scientists and the people that are next to us in our local communities. And this is very interesting to see. It's not our institutions. We trust in those where we have an emotional relationship with them, a certain sense. And a lot of people today have been talking about resiliency. And I wanted to show you this photo of what resiliency is for me. This is another Japanese concept, kitsukuroi. When a dish or a vase gets broken, they don't throw the pieces away. They rebuild it using golden lacquer to put them all together. So you have the fact that they're practical and they are aesthetically pleasing to see. So you are building on your own destruction, you're rebuilding, and you're showing your scars. So I think the society feels this need of values. Now we have like a pyramid of requirements, and in Europe we have all our basic needs covered, most of us at least. So our generation, and especially younger generations, are demanding more values. And the only thing I would like to mention is the fact that we need to mourn. We need to mourn what has happened. There's this need to go through what has happened, to make sense of all this sadness, this loss. A lot of people have lost loved ones, and this is something that has been terribly sad and difficult when you are grieving someone that has died and you have not been able to say goodbye. So I'm going to leave the floor to Stuart now. Can you give us your point of view? Have you listened to the translation?
No, I don't have translation, unfortunately.
Okay, so what sort of ideas can you share with us about when we are a little bit over this crisis? What do you think that will be the behavior and the consuming uses of all the citizens? Will we advance towards the decarbonization, or we will go back to our old habits?
I think that's a very good question, and there's a lot of uncertainty around that. I'd like to sort of share a few thoughts on that question with you. So I think so far we know, or it looks like emissions globally will drop by around 6 to 7% during the course of 2020 as a result of the pandemic. Of course, nothing deliberately intended to reduce emissions, but a large part of that has been due to behaviour change, particularly in relation to transport, how people move around. So people have changed their behaviour. And behind that sort of headline figure of 6 to 7% estimate, actually at their peak, emissions were 17% lower in April of this year compared to last year. And emissions from surface transport, from cars and other vehicles, were down by a third in April, and aviation was down by nearly 2/3. So a starting point to answer that question is that we know that rapid and sudden behaviour change can have big impacts for climate mitigation, for emissions reduction. But yes, the concern is certainly there that despite these changes, when lockdown conditions are lifted, many of us may well go back to our old ways. And I think for me as a psychologist, that's because much of our everyday behaviour is grounded in habit, routine, convention, and these things are supported by stable contexts. What do I mean by stable contexts? Well, some of this is down to the physical environment, including transport infrastructure. So roads and cities that are made for cars lead people to drive in them and to them. And I think cultural and social expectations are also important. So for many people, the working day has always ended in the driver's seat of a private car, alongside thousands of other people doing the same. So we need to understand that what has led to the behaviour change that's behind emissions drops has been a temporary suspension of those conditions. And if those conditions return to how they were before, then many of our behaviours will too, I think. But there are some ways that change could happen, that we might see a persistence of those effects. First of all, any disruption to our habits and routines can lead people to reflect more consciously on their choices and actions. So quite a number of psychology studies show that when people's routines are disrupted, for example, when they move house, then they're more likely to consciously think about how they take travel decisions than if they're established pattern of behaviour. And some research that my centre did during the lockdown has shown that the disruption we've experienced during this year has led to many people to reflect on their choices they make. So we did a public perception survey of 1,000 people in the UK. We found that before lockdown, around 1 in 10 people worked from home, but this rose to over 1 in 3 during lockdown. And more importantly, most people found this to be a positive experience of those who did do this. And as a result, many plan to do more of it in the future, suggesting we may see some lasting effects. And likewise, almost half of our survey respondents said they would reduce how much they fly once lockdown eases. So we can expect to see some persistence, I think. But of course, a lot of people can't work from home, but it does suggest that habits and routines are in a state of flux. But what's more important, I think, than individuals reflecting on their choices of it will require interventions and policy changes to lock in those lifestyle changes over the coming years. And this is something that government and industry can influence. So in Wales, in the UK, where I'm based, Wales has regional powers, and the government has officially stated they want to see 1/3 of people working from home, not just now and in response to the pandemic, but for the foreseeable future. So the government there is proposing local hubs for remote working to help people, and to help people work near a home, as well as spending money away from city centres. And likewise, in terms of aviation, it seems likely this may never return to pre-COVID levels. So while there will be some rebound, I think individuals and businesses have got used to not jumping on a plane when alternatives will do, such as WebEx and Zoom. And there's an opportunity for businesses to lock in changes by changing their expectations and practices. So in summary, I think if we simply go back to the pre-COVID world, how things were then, we can expect to see some small changes in people's practices persist, but we will see many behaviours rebound. But if we do see ambitious structural changes implemented by governments and business, this does have the chance to lead to more longer-lasting behaviour change.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Ahora una pregunta para Loreto, ya punto de vista arquitectónico.
Now I have a question for Loreto. How do you think this COVID can impact the design of buildings and the management of spaces, even in urban areas? Crises in architecture have always led to different designs. After the Second World War, there was this movement in Berlin, ventilation improved. So crises always lead to better ideas. In San Sebastián de los Reyes, here in Madrid, we found a project by the town council which encouraged owners of houses to take energy efficiency measures in return of being able to construct or build more square meters. Square meters are always a limitation, and owners sometimes are limited by this amount of meters that they can build. And I think that this idea is quite creative in this regard. Other changes, well, we'll need to review different models, such as the passive house is quite hermetic, and ventilation to take place. Office spaces maybe are not so demanded, and the truth is that we are in the way of, or in the path of creating changes. Stuart.
The cultural, contextual and personal factors underpinning sustainable lifestyles. Where can you work in that direction? What can we do?
Yeah, well, I think in some ways it's easier to say how these things give rise to unsustainable lifestyles, but I'll try to answer this question in a way that points to more positive factors. And I talked a bit about travel and transport just now, and I think it's important to contrast different countries' approaches to this and different cities' approaches. And in some places, the culture is to travel actively in a low-carbon way. So the Netherlands is often mentioned in this regard, and I think rightly so. A few times I've been to the Netherlands, including Groningen, where there's a lot of environmental psychology research. As a British person, it's actually quite sort of shocking and amazing to see how people can get around. And the important thing here is that this is normal. This is the culture to cycle in the everyday context for how people get around. In terms of personal factors, a lot of things matter for whether or not people are concerned about climate change and support climate policy. But one of the most important things is our values. So knowledge matters, and how we understand the climate crisis matters. But really, it's about our underlying values. And so a lot of research shows that if people are focused in a general sense on the world beyond themselves and beyond their immediate interests, if they see themselves as part of something bigger, so this is technically called self-transcendent values, then they're more likely to be concerned about and act on climate change than if they're focused on things like status, power, wealth, and their own interests. But the most important personal factor determining whether people have high or low footprints is becoming increasingly obvious. I think it is wealth and income. And so whilst the psychology does matter here, a person's income is a very important factor, perhaps the most important factor in determining carbon footprint. So if you have a high income, you're more likely to live in a large house, consume many resources, and to drive and fly often.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Pasando ya a un área que ya has tocado en tu primera intervención más psicológica, ¿qué recomendación harías a las empresas y a los profesionales para gestionar los equipos en estas condiciones de incertidumbres, grandes cambios y que parece que el teletrabajo puede quedarse en parte? ¿Cómo gestionar la energía de grupo para que siga empujando proyectos, ilusionando y haciendo que las empresas vayan cumpliendo sus objetivos?
Esta pregunta me encanta. Me parece.
I really love this question. It's Ortega y Gasset in 1936 warned against the barbarians, the ignorance, and maybe sometimes we looked for specialists, but the truth is that we need multidisciplinary groups, especially in times of crisis where disruptive thought is very important, where creative is important. We need to have the knowledge of everyone. We need to have philosophy, we need to have anthropology, etc. So my recommendation would be to have different teams with different people, diversity. A very famous philosopher in Spain said that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, and that's something that we need to remember from the Second World War. It is very important to remember our past. Technicians sometimes do not take this human part into account, and we need to have it. We need to support them, because we are not all philosophers and we don't understand everything. We don't know every single piece of information that we need. So we need support from other groups of people. We also need to work on the role of women, and that's not because I'm a woman. It's not a personal perspective. Rwanda has the most inclusive parliament in the world, and they include women, and they have included women by chance, because a lot of men died in the war and women had to take more responsibility. So it was like a forced situation, and women have different characteristics. We don't need to deny that women are carriers, and we have different characteristics. But we've seen that countries who managed the crisis of COVID better were led by women. And that's another reflection that we need to take into account, and that really it's important. The truth is that not all narcissists are men, but we need to balance a little bit the situation. And I'm sorry for saying that, but we need to be more balanced and to have more emotional aspects into account and find an interesting way out. And I think that the role of women is very important. And then teams. Teams are very important. It is very good to think about a win-win solutions or nothing, because the games where one wins and the other loses are self-destructive. But there are win-win solutions that we need to imagine, that we need to bear in mind, and we need to be mentally prepared to reach or to have win-win solutions. Companies, workers, freedom for people to have all synergy inside, to have the necessary creativity that we need to break the binary 1-0. No, synergy is much more than that. So multidisciplinary groups to work good. Stuart, how can you combine?
Was this climate change? What suggestions could you make just to be able to advance forward quicker and engaging all the population?
Okay, I mean, I think in some of the discussion I've heard already, I think what's clear is that we have sort of multiple intersecting crises, probably an economic recession or crisis coming up in many countries, a current health crisis, etc. And I think that the main thing to remember, and we all know this, and I've heard other people say this, is that these are not separate problems. Climate change is an economic issue. Climate impacts as they unfold will have major consequences for economies around the world. So when we talk to people, to the public about climate change, we sometimes do it in a way that pits the environment as if this is a thing you can draw a circle around, the environment against the economy, and you can have one or the other. And we saw this the other day with the presidential debate, and when Joe Biden talked about transitioning away from oil, a lot of the media coverage was about the harms to an industry and jobs. Now, of course, that is very important to take into account, but really we have to think of these problems together. And I think that often we've not done a particularly good job, I say we as whether that's psychologists or communicators or people trying to engage with the public, in terms of how we communicate about climate change as if it is a separate thing. And it is a health issue. I mean, I work on a project, the journal The Lancet has a project looking at climate impacts, and the things that are going to affect us through climate change will in many ways affect our health and our well-being, and also the things that we can do as individuals and as communities to address climate change can also be beneficial for health. So we think we need to think in that more holistic way. So if we can find ways to get out of our cars and travel more actively, that's better for our health. If we can change our diets to be more healthy, there's some excellent research showing that for the most part, diets which are in line with WHO guidelines tend to be lower carbon diets. So I think we should try and think of these issues as being synergistic. And although we're in a very difficult and terrible time at the moment, there is an enormous opportunity as well to make sure we do these things in a way that we have a sustainable future, and that the economic recovery measures can be understood by people in a way that this helps with jobs and supporting communities, but also helps to ensure we don't have bigger emergencies facing us down the line.
Thank you very much, Stuart. There is a few questions from the audience.
Thank you, Stuart. I don't know whether we have much time, but
how can we promote better communication of climate change? ¿Cómo podemos favorecer la comunicación sobre el cambio climático?
pregunta. Creo que el académico va a contestar mejor que yo.
I think
Acaba de hablar el de la comunicación.
Sure, very happy to do that. I think one thing that we have done a lot in the past, and we as climate communicators of all sorts, is to communicate the science. And there's been good and bad ways of communicating the science. But one way or another, we've sort of bashed our way through the jungle, and now most people around the world, and particularly in Europe, but also around the world, there's research showing that most people do accept the reality and the importance and the need to act on climate change. So the basic science has got through. Now, of course, there are still going to be skeptics and people who don't agree, but we've achieved that message. What we need to do, I think, to focus our communication now on the social and the political challenges. That climate change is something that is very much part and parcel of our lives and how we run our countries and how we lead our lives, and I think that has been missing, and sometimes there is a sense as well in which the solutions to climate change are often framed in quite technical or technological manners, as if that's somehow separate from our lives. But I think it's becoming increasingly obvious that unless we have citizen engagement, unless we all sort of participate in this, and not just in a kind of making platitudes way, but this is a bit like COVID. You know, this is serious, and we all have to be on board and to find our way through this. And I think that sort of social and political emphasis is where we need to be putting our focus for communication in the future.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Time is over. Ya nos hemos excedido el tiempo.
We ran out of time, sorry about that. We didn't manage our second objective, which was to be punctual and on time, but we wanted to create an interesting conversation. I think we managed that. So in order to conclude, we have a short video, really, really short, I assure you. So you're still online, don't leave us, because it's just some statements from the different companies that are part of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council. Thank you, and...
Lo pone aquí.
La respuesta a la crisis económica es la de acelerar el cumplimiento de los objetivos a 2030 de la transición energética. Solo así conseguiremos una economía más moderna, resiliente y competitiva. La crisis originada por la COVID-19 ha tenido un impacto drástico en nuestra sociedad y en nuestra economía. Las compañías energéticas hemos tenido un papel clave a la hora de garantizar la continuidad de la actividad, y nuestro papel seguirá siendo muy relevante en la recuperación económica. Para ello debemos integrar en nuestras estrategias y nuestros modelos de negocio una agenda ESG que nos permita dar respuestas a las demandas de la sociedad.
El futuro energético y climático tiene una especial relevancia. La respuesta al COVID debe contribuir a intensificar y acelerar la lucha contra el cambio climático. La transición energética, que pasa por la electrificación de la economía, debe ser palanca en la recuperación económica. Además, justa con atención a las zonas más afectadas y a los colectivos más vulnerables.
La seguridad de nuestros trabajadores junto con la garantía de suministro han sido nuestras mayores prioridades en esta situación de COVID, y para ello hemos contado con el compromiso de nuestros trabajadores.
Los planes de estímulo por la crisis del COVID suponen una oportunidad histórica de financiación y ayudas para nuestra economía, pero tenemos la obligación moral de no dejar una deuda sin más, sino de legar una economía mejor, más competitiva, más sostenible y más resiliente. Pero tenemos que empezar desde ya.
La crisis de la pandemia pone todavía más de manifiesto retos tan importantes como la lucha contra el cambio climático, la lucha contra las desigualdades y, por supuesto, la mejora en la gobernanza de todos los temas que afectan a la sostenibilidad. En este sentido, Naturgy aprobó en su Junta de Accionistas del pasado mes de mayo la creación de una comisión de sostenibilidad delegada del Consejo que supervisa, vigila y propone los objetivos que nos van a guiar durante los próximos años.
Necesitamos una industria potente que garantice un suministro seguro, asequible y sostenible para todos, y que además nos garantice evitar la dependencia de terceros países. Ahora más que nunca es fundamental que todos los actores del sector energético trabajemos unidos, que unamos nuestros esfuerzos y que de la mano de todas las soluciones tecnológicas encontremos los proyectos y las inversiones más coste eficientes para trabajar en la descarbonización y en una recuperación económica lo más rápida posible.
La recuperación económica será verde y digital, y desde el sector gasista impulsaremos la digitalización y los gases renovables, pieza fundamental para el mix energético del futuro.
La crisis del COVID nos recuerda el papel indispensable de la electricidad en nuestras vidas. La energía es esencial para la recuperación económica y la gran oportunidad está en avanzar activamente en la transformación de los sistemas energéticos, apoyar la innovación y garantizar la sostenibilidad.
Durante esta terrible pandemia que ha cambiado nuestra forma de vivir, el sector energético ha respondido de una forma sólida, cumpliendo su función de ser el servicio esencial que ha permitido que los demás servicios esenciales funcionen. Y desde Viesgo queremos permanecer fieles a nuestro propósito, siendo la energía para el mundo que queremos.
Muchísimas gracias a todos.
Thank you very much for being here virtually, and I will recommend you to visit our website. You'll see very interesting studies on the different scenarios and trilemma. Thank you very much for being here today. Hope you enjoy the day.